Okay, so now what we are going to do is we are going to connect our Spring application to the Postgres database. Now there are two approaches on which you can connect. First is by using a configuration class, and second is by using a configuration file. So I'm going to show you both of them. Now let's start with the first one. So I'm just going to create here a class, new Java class in our config package, and I'm just going to put the name database config. And I'm going to put here the configuration annotation, which lets Spring Boot add for us this class in the application context, and we just need one object. The name of the object is data source. So I'm just going to put public data source the same name, and I'm just going to return a data source builder, and I'm going to put create. And here we need to specify 4 properties. One is the driver class name, the next one is the URL, the third one is the username, and the second one is the password, and build. And the drive class name in our case is org postgresql driver. And basically what will tell the data source and what will tell Spring for us, hey, this is a Postgres database, and please use this driver. Now this driver has been automatically downloaded for us when we have added the Data Jpa dependency. Actually, it has been downloaded for us when we added this dependency, this org postgresql dependency. Now the URL, the syntax for the URL is something like this. It's jdbc postgresql / then the host name, then the port, then / then your database name. And in our case, if we look here, if I right click properties, you will see that the host name is localhost. So I'm just going to put jdbc postgresql / now this is a string, localhost, then the port is the default one, 5432, and our database name is Spring Boot. So the names have to coincide. Now the username is Postgres, the one by default, this one, and the password, in my case, it's admin. And now we need to specify this as a bin, so Spring will add for us in our application context. And if you remember, we use bin to configure objects which are in external libraries, and this data source is an external library. Now we can't go to the actual class, actually it's an interface, we can't go and put here the component class. So that's why we use this bin annotation, so we can add this class in our application context as a singleton. So now if we restart our application, you will see I no longer have the error and which we have earlier. You see now the application is connected to our database. Now this is one approach. The second approach is by using this file called application properties file. Now this is a special file which Spring Boot loads when it starts the application, and this file is a key value property file. If you see here, we have configured two types of key values, this one and this one, and now we are going to configure the database connection properties, and I'm just going to show you how. Spring data source, this is the general syntax, and then driver, Spring data source URL, Spring data source username, and Spring data source password. And here we are going to put the same properties, org postgresql driver, the URL is jdbc postgresql / localhost 5432 Spring Boot, the username is admin, no, it's Postgres, that's the password, and the password is admin. And I'm going to go to database config here. I'm just going to comment this, and if I restart my application, you will see I no longer have the error. And what Spring has done for us, based on this Spring data source, it has done the same thing on which we do here. It has created this object for us based on putting this key value properties. Now, I personally prefer this approach because this approach you can externalize this file and you can change the configuration, and this is much more clean. Instead, this is like a hard-coded value. But I am going to show you how you can add your own properties, your own custom properties in this file, and you can load it in your application. But these are two approaches on which you have connected, and you can see how easy it is. You just put like four lines of code, and based on these 4 lines of code, Spring Boot does all this magic for us. Now I'm just going to show you that you don't even need this particular property. You can delete this here, and you can even delete this here, and Spring will automatically know based on this URL that this is a PostgreSQL database, and it will use the PostgreSQL driver which we have already have. So now if I restart, you will see I don't have an error because I don't have that specific driver configured, and you can see that only 3 lines of code, and you just connected your application to an external database. Now, just using plain Spring, you will need to do a lot of manual configuration, and this is the power of Spring Boot. As I said to you in a video earlier, Spring Boot does all this auto configuration stuff for us. Now, if you don't use Spring and you just use plain old Java, trust me, it's a lot of work, and you waste a lot of time when you have this Spring framework. So now we have our application connected to the database. The next steps for us is to think of the model of the database, to design our database and to design our tables, and to think how we can do this. And we will do this in the next videos.